Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Coffin Corner Podcast. Today we have on a very special guest, my boss and Chiefs fan, Steve Haig. How's it going, Steve?
Aaron, it's going really well. Training camps have opened. We're all excited about that.
Yeah, football's
especially if
finally
you're
here.
a Kansas City fan, you're a Royals fan too, and it hasn't been a great season for baseball. So
Yeah.
looking forward to NFL.
Well, and hopefully it'll be, it should be a good season for you guys. But yeah, we're talking Nate Burleson, former NFL receiver, now NFL analyst, put out an article on NFL.com, his top 10 receivers in the NFL going into 2019. It's a good list, I think.
Do you ever get to watch Nate on the NFL morning program called Good Morning Football?
Yeah, I watch it sometimes.
Yeah.
I know he's been on there for like a couple years now. So
I like that group, actually.
Yeah.
I like the banter and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
They go off and do a lot of different things with the NFL, but Nate's a good representative of the former players group. Yeah.
Absolutely. And he, if you judge it just by play, I mean, he was a good receiver too.
Yeah.
He had a long career and probably most successful with the Seahawks, I'd say. But this list, I definitely agree. We'll just go over it real quick.
Sure.
1 to 10, in respective order. DeAndre Hopkins, Julio Jones, Michael Thomas, Mike Evans, Odell Beckham Jr., Antonio Brown, Keenan Allen, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, and Juju Smith-Schuster. Now, starting at 1, I totally agree with the DeAndre Hopkins thing.
He's an amazing receiver. You just can't say enough good things about Hopkins.
Yeah, well, and I mean,
nobody disagrees with that, I don't think.
Yeah, well, and you can argue, 3 or 4 guys to be number 1 on the list on this list. But I mean, I don't think he dropped a pass last year when I was watching him play.
Yeah, I think I heard that. And he does every expected thing right, and then makes the amazing catch look routine.
Mm-hmm.
He's got big hands. He can catch with one hand, but it's not a special thing for him. It's just a natural thing to reach out and grab it.
Yeah, well, and I think going into this year, he'll have his best year so far. Last year, 1,500 plus yards, 8 touchdowns. That is elite. But I think this year, one thing we'll see kind of ramp up is the touchdowns. A lot of guys on this list have 10 plus. So I think this year, Deshaun Watson taking that next step. I think them establishing a run game a little more and kind of solidifying that offensive line a little more through the draft. I think that his touchdown numbers will go up. Next guy on the list, Julio Jones. Also agree with this, just based on his production from last year, which was insane. 1,600 plus yards and 11 TDs.
Well, what did he say? Was it on Twitter or somebody quoted him yesterday, day before, as saying, "I'm going to really go for 3,000 this year."
Yeah, that's insane. Well, I'm pretty sure. I don't think he's reported to camp yet either. So. He did report to camp. He held out for a little bit, but I think he reported.
Yeah,
who am I thinking of the receiver that? Maybe it's Zeke and Melvin Gordon. I'm totally wrong position.
Melvin Gordon certainly, and Zeke, right? Yeah.
Michael Thomas is the guy who I'm thinking of.
He's not in camp.
No, he is not in camp.
Okay.
Comes in at number 3 on this list, and I think by the end of, I agree with this ranking right now, having him 3rd, 1,400 yards, 9 touchdowns. I think next year he's going to really separate himself from, the rest of the group. He's the youngest one on here, I think. And just the raw talent he has and that offense is such a powerhouse. Yeah, I see him going off for 1,600 yards.
I'm going to bring this
touchdowns.
up because I think this is something to consider when you look at a list of top receivers.
Mm-hmm.
You go and I know you go all the way through the top 10, but who's throwing to these guys? Okay?
Yeah.
Are you going to be in the top 10 if you've got Joe Flacco throwing to you?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm no rip on Joe Flacco just because he's with the Broncos and I'm a Chiefs fan,
Mm-hmm.
but
It's okay to rip on him a little bit.
no, I'm just saying that you have to combine the special talent of size and agility and speed and hands, with the fact that somebody can actually get the ball within your ability to jump up and catch it.
Yeah.
Right? There are a lot of potential, great receivers out there who are struggling to get targets. So.
Yeah, well, and I think if you look at this list too, 90% of these guys, if you look at their quarterbacks, are either perennial Pro Bowl quarterbacks or quarterbacks, who are well established in this league. DeAndre Hopkins, Julio Jones, Michael Thomas. I mean, the only one that I would disagree with on this list that doesn't have a great quarterback is Mike Evans, right? And last year, Fitzmagic, all that stuff, he put up good numbers, which Mike Evans will always put up good numbers. But I mean, yeah, the only guy on here that doesn't have a good quarterback is him and Jameis Winston. So that's a good point.
Well, Mike Evans, I just remember watching him catch passes from Johnny
football,
Manziel, and he could go everywhere on the field and always a threat, and he still is. I think his best days are ahead of him.
Yeah, well, and I think the one thing that would benefit him, obviously, from having a different quarterback. We'll see if Bruce Arians can fix Jameis Winston, but that team has never really had a solidified run game either. And he's, aside from Adam Humphries, they really haven't ever had another option on that offense. O.J. Howard is a young tight end, but he's always been the only guy to go to. So it'll be interesting to see if Bruce Arians turns him around, his production just ramp up even more. He had 1,400 yards and 9 touchdowns. Obviously, that's elite, but I think you could expect more out of him this year. Next is, so we had Michael Thomas, Mike Evans, OBJ. This is a tricky one, right?
I agree.
He switches. He was hurt last year, didn't play the whole year. He switches to gets traded to the Browns. And it's just, for me, last year he had 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns, which to me that's, if we're going based solely on stats from last year, that ranks, middle of the pack of starting receivers. But I just don't think there's enough proven, compatibility between him and Baker Mayfield yet.
Well, we're talking about a top 10 list of current wide receivers in the NFL. All right, is it based on last year's catches? Is it based on reputation? There are expectations, of course, that he's going to, be the greatest of all time. And moving to Cleveland, he gets out of the big spotlight of New York, but I think he thrived on that.
Absolutely.
And is he the go-to guy? He's going to get the same coverage he would have gotten in New York. Can Cleveland fill in the gaps, and from the running game and tight end and slot receiver and that sort of thing?
Yeah.
So, there's nothing but up to go for Cleveland. And, I just worry about Beckham being frustrated if he doesn't get as many targets in the first 2 or 3 games, and if they don't do as well as they hope, here comes the tweets, here come the special antics, here's the sideline frowning,
punching it was the kicking net, I think.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Well, and
what does that do to a young team in Cleveland?
Yeah. And a young
Kitchens
quarterback too.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, and I think Freddie Kitchens will handle it well. I mean, they have so many options on that offense, and a quarterback who I've compared to the likes of Brett Favre. But we'll see. Baker's had a year with Jarvis Landry and Antonio Callaway, and multiple years with David Njoku. Well, a year with David Njoku. Like, Odell Beckham is the new guy there. Everyone else, for the most part, is the same besides, Kevin Zeitler. I think they got rid of him. But from the video I've seen in training camp, it's all these magnificent passes from Baker to OBJ. But for him to get back to that, I want to have a 2,000-yard season, I think that he is going to have to kind of accept the team, the role playing, not just like, give me the ball every play. The reason I think that will work is because of Jarvis Landry. They've been friends since high school. They played together at LSU. And I think, if he were to not get angry at someone for getting more targets than him, I think it would be Jarvis Landry. but we'll see. A guy that I think should have been way higher on this list, top 3, Antonio Brown, comes in at, what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is insane to me. Antonio Brown, let's rewind back, going on right now is the NFL Top 100. I think they're like in the 60s right now. But rewind to last year, Antonio Brown was the 3rd on that list as a receiver, which it blows my mind. But last year, amid all the Pittsburgh drama, he still managed to catch 15 touchdowns. That's one short of leading the NFL.
Well, again, it's the same scenario well, not exactly the same, but a similar scenario with Beckham in that, he's both got a reputation as a great receiver, but also for the drama. And so is his position at 6 based on his ability to go out and be that number 3 on the top 100 list again, or is it based on the drama from leaving Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
And it's also, is it based on a projection, or is it based on what he's done last year or the year before? The subjectivity of any list like this is always open to question, right? So, from an AFC West point of view, it's going to be exciting to play Antonio Brown 2 times a year.
Yeah, absolutely.
And get to watch a lot of those games. And I expect that he will place a tremendous amount of expectations on himself and try to be the leader that people don't think he is. We'll see that really early. We might even see some kind of a fallout in training camp. Who knows? Yeah. It's possible.
Well,
he came in today.
They are on Hard Knocks this year,
too. He came in today on a hot air balloon.
Yeah. Oh, did he really?
That's what I read.
I did not see that. I didn't even know Raiders training camp started today. Another thing that I think has to do with him falling so much is what we were talking about before, in the fact of who's throwing the ball to him, right? Derek Carr a couple of years ago was in the MVP talk until he broke his leg. But, last year, Ben Roethlisberger put up 5,100 yards passing. I don't think Derek Carr's ever, broken 5,000 before. So...
Well, not too many have.
Yeah, I mean, that offense was pass heavy. He also threw 16 interceptions.
Sure.
But I think that's, why the drop in rank is there, is because, same with OBJ, the question of how good is he going to be with Baker is, how good is AB going to be with Antonio Brown? And we'll see. This division is loaded with receivers now.
It sure is.
I mean, the next 3. I mean, these 6, 7, and 8 are all in the AFC West. So, with the next guy being Keenan Allen, who I thought should have been lower, and that's solely. Yeah, I think Keenan Allen is a great receiver. Obviously, having to play him twice a year as a Broncos fan is not fun. He also has a great quarterback throwing to him. They have a complete offense, but the production just doesn't match up with top 10. 1,100 yards and 9 touchdowns. And I keep referring, back to, these stats from last year. But I think they have him up here because the Chargers are slotted to be a Super Bowl contending team, obviously pending getting Melvin Gordon back and figuring that all out. And the emergence of Mike Williams, stuff like that. But I just don't, there are other receivers in this league who I would much rather have at wideout than Keenan Allen.
I think he's a crybaby myself, okay?
Please do tell why you think that.
And I could call him something else, but I think you have a family show going here. But,
I mean, hey.
It goes to the rivalry between the Chiefs and the Chargers. He likes to, and he's done very well against the Chiefs in the past, but who hasn't done well against the Chiefs in defense in the past?
Yeah, I mean, Marcus Peters was their best cornerback.
Yeah, well, right, and so a lot of changes there this year, but Allen just seems to have a burr under the saddle for the Chiefs. Whether they win, they lose, whether he plays well, he doesn't. The referees seem to be the at fault for calls not being made. It'll be interesting to see how the new replay rules on pass interference affects everybody. But I respect Keenan Allen, but I think he's a little fragile. even though he has a lot to, I think he has a lot to prove. I think he thinks he should have been recognized a long time ago, and maybe that chip on his shoulder will drive him this year. But I still think he's sort of a whiny.
Yeah, when I wonder if that whiny thing kind of rubs
B-word.
up. Yeah, no, I feel you. One, same goes for his quarterback too.
Sure.
So, I'm, as a Chiefs fan and a Broncos fan, I'm sure we, could have some choice words for Phillip Rivers too.
Phillip is a lot of fun. Yeah,
he is a lot of fun. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Next up is your guy Tyreek Hill.
What an interesting year.
Aside from all the other Tyreek Hill news, he made this list. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm not sure exactly how to place him higher. I know we talked about this earlier. I think his impact on the Chiefs is huge.
Yeah.
I think his relationship with Mahomes is amazing. Mahomes missed him a lot deep last year, so I think his numbers would have been even more impressive. You can't stop the guy. He goes fast everywhere he goes. He's a great ball catcher. He's fearless for going up and coming down, hurting himself if necessary to make the big play. He's obviously very versatile. I think he scares everybody to death.
Oh, absolutely. He's the most explosive player in the NFL. You could argue.
I think with his probably not having to do the returning this year will help his numbers. And of course the controversy behind him, mostly we'll see. I mean, when he goes into various stadiums, that'll be kind of a pain, but he's suffered that already from his earlier transactions or transgressions.
Yeah. Well, and I think you have to think. I have to think about this. All drama aside, right? Because everyone feels a certain way about Tyreek Hill. However, I mean, he did catch 12 touchdowns last year, and he is the fastest receiver in the NFL, and he takes the top off of defenses. And his connection with Patrick Mahomes is, a connection to the likes of, Jerry Rice and Joe Montana. And not to say that they're going to put up numbers like they did, but when you watch them play, it's like they know exactly, what each other's thinking on the field. So I think his numbers are going to go up this year.
I think his numbers will go up this year also. And you hear this a lot, but, I know Andy Reid hasn't won a Super Bowl, has only been to one, and the Chiefs haven't been there in 50 bloody years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the
49 actually. But
yeah, I hear you. The versatility, the flexibility that Andy has with the playmakers on that team gives him a chance to bring a fresh Tyreek Hill into plays and big plays more often than going to him over and over and over again. If he didn't have Kelsey, if he didn't have Watkins, he doesn't have his Kareem Hunt, but what's his name is
Damian Williams.
Damian Williams showed some interesting abilities last year. So, I agree his numbers are going to go up too.
Yeah, well, and I think the addition of somebody like Mecole Hardman, who is almost the mirror image of Tyreek Hill, fast receiver, deep threat, and in the loss of Kareem Hunt, I think will lead to letting Patrick Mahomes be Patrick Mahomes every game and launch the ball down the field. And I just think the addition of Mecole Hardman, obviously you have Travis Kelce there, it's going to tie up a lot of defenders elsewhere. So I think his numbers will bump up a lot.
Well, they do a lot with the screen game too.
Yeah.
So it's about catching and running with it, right? That's where a lot of these yards are for a lot of these receivers, because not every quarterback is throwing it 40 yards down the field.
Yeah.
It's a blast to watch Tyreek play. It's a blast to watch every single one of these guys play.
Yeah.
That's why the NFL is so good and why we all look forward to it.
Well, and when you think of the Chiefs offense, I always think of that game against the Rams last year, which is probably the best game that I watched.
It was entertaining, wasn't it?
It was probably one of the craziest games I've ever watched.
Right.
Next guy on this list, Fresno State alum, Devontae Adams. I love Devontae Adams. I think 9 is perfect for him. I don't think he's a top 5 receiver, but I think he's a Hall of Fame caliber receiver. and a touchdown machine. Obviously, again, a guy that has a great quarterback behind him, but a team that lacked receiving talent a lot last year. I don't know who their second receiver was, who their second leading receiver was, but they were really hurting for talent at receiver last year. And Davante Adams, another Pro Bowl year with Aaron Rodgers. So I like him on this list a lot.
I agree with you. I think it's a bounce back year for the Packers if they can protect Aaron Rodgers, and Adams will come into his own, as if he's not already into his own. He's a steady guy. He's the opposite of Antonio Brown and OBJ in that he's not interested in the spotlight being on himself. He just wants to come out there and perform, and he's a great team player and a great leader in that regard.
Yeah, and he's the kind of guy that, you never go back and, Odell Beckham has that catch that, and he has all these moments from his career that you remember. I can't recall really a moment significant about Davante Adams. I just know that at the end of the season he has 1,000+ yards and 10+ touchdowns.
Exactly.
And one of the most consistent receivers in the NFL. The last guy on here, Juju Smith-Schuster. I have a couple guys that could definitely kick him off this list. 1,400 yards is elite, but 7 touchdowns, for top 10 receiver, I just don't see that. A guy like Adam Thielen, who had an incredible year, 1,300 yards, 2 more touchdowns than Juju. I think for me, him or T.Y. Hilton would fit better at the bottom of this list for me.
I'm waiting for another year before I put Juju up in the top 10 myself. I give him credit for making it through the Pittsburgh drama and stepping up. I remember what was the play where he fumbled and really owned it and was in the playoffs and I think he grew up a lot from that. That team certainly needs strong, mature veteran leadership, and he's a fairly young guy, but I think they're in good shape with him in the future, and he's a guy you got a game plan for every week. He can make great catches and run through people, and I'm impressed with him. But I'm with you on Thielen and even T.Y. Hilton for sure. I mean, that will be really fascinating to see how that Indianapolis offense
I think they're
together again this year.
I think they're the most underrated team in the NFL right now.
I think they like it that way.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's how Andrew Luck carries himself. But when I think of Juju, I think of that 90+ yard touchdown against the Broncos he had last year. But I also, he is really young. I think he's not 21 or 22. But just the way he handled all that drama, even and there was a point where, when all this stuff was going down, where Antonio Brown had shared something on social media that was like, when Juju was still at USC, he had messaged him he shared it on, and just the way Juju handled that, because that's embarrassing. You know what I mean? Like, for someone to share something where you confided in them, and then they make fun of you for it on social media. It's not the easiest thing to cope with, especially when you're on a platform like the NFL.
Right.
And it made me respect him a lot more. But again, Adam Thielen definitely is better than Juju at this point. Next year I would say that Thielen puts up better numbers. But we'll see. Another guy I had on here is Robert Woods. Right. I don't think he cracks the top 10, but I put him at about the same rank as Juju. So
if you went from 11 to 20, there wouldn't be much fall off.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think even 11 to 15.
Yeah.
It's a funny thing about receivers. Is you can have a down. I mean, look at Randy Moss. He obviously Hall of Fame career, goes to Oakland, doesn't even amass 1,000, and then has this, probably one of the best years by a receiver of all time in New England. So it's people have up and down years, and Juju could go off. Who knows? Now that Antonio Brown's not in the mix, and they've solidified, him and James Conner are pretty much the new Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown. He could get a lot more touches this year. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah,
it's going to be a fun one.
I'm not prepared to go with James Conner as Le'Veon Bell anytime soon, and I'm really looking forward
He was
to
a Pro Bowler. He was a Pro Bowler.
Yeah, a lot of people can be the Pro Bowlers.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
It doesn't take that much to get the Pro Bowl, but what is he going to bring to the Jets, and how are they going to use him?
Le'Veon.
My gosh. You notice I know we're on receivers, but many running backs have adopted that little stutter step delay, wait for the hole to open, and then blast through it.
I mean, that's what made LaShawn McCoy great.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
He scares me. He's took a whole year off. His
legs
are
legs.
Fresh.
Yep.
But then here we are about to go through the training camp with who's going to go down, who's going to tear their Achilles. Who's going to be the first to bring about the argument, why are we playing these doggone preseason games? They don't mean anything. You don't even get paid for them. And yeah, I fear that. Yeah, all the things on paper look so good, and you're just ready to go out and play.
Well, and that Jets team is well improved. I mean, signing C.J. Mosley and having Jamal Adams there and Sam Darnold in his second year and adding Le'Veon Bell to that backfield – I mean, they could win 10 games next year, but they could also go 6-10. You know what I mean? So that's it. Doesn't get much better than that. Yeah, I love the NFL. It's so much different than every sport in the fact that you can turn a franchise around in a year. In the NBA, I guess you can do that too, but you don't see like mega teams in the
True.
NFL. So it's always fun to watch because there's so much skepticism around it. But we'll see. I think. A receiver that's really going to shock people next year and be on this list. Everyone wants me to say Courtland Sutton, but I'm going to say Calvin Ridley from Atlanta. I really like him a lot. He had a lot of touchdowns, like 800 yards, so we'll see what he does. But that is all we have for today. Thank you for coming on, Steve. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. It was a lot of fun.
You guys can check us out at Coffin Corner Met on Twitter, on YouTube, Coffin Corner Podcast, and on Facebook, Coffin Corner Podcast, and all of our sports content here at Met Media on mymetmedia.com. Thanks, and we'll see you guys next time. I grabbed the wrong mouse.